we are back with more Werewolf the Apocalypse Heart of the Forest. So, when we last left off, we had just begun our walk through the town of Bielarueza. I'll get it right eventually. And I had just learned about my family's apparently, checkered history in this town, as well as meeting some interesting characters, including, one lady who gave me a magical joint that showed me a flashback about my ancestors in the forest, and another young woman who was antagonizing some drunks, and then apparently knows about my anger issues, and knows there's something more to me. So, we will see what the hell she is talking about as we go to the logging protest, because some douchebags are logging the forest illegally, even though it is one of the last most protected, sacred, ancient forests on the friggin' planet. So let's see how that goes. Chapter 2, Logging. The day after. The next morning was full of sunshine and birdsong. I could smell the heat of the afternoon building. Those long, honey-like hours in late June when the earth isn't tired of its own warmth yet, but it was crisp and pleasant now. I sat on my bed for a moment, letting my feet dangle from it. I felt overwhelmed. The weight of the previous day had coiled up somewhere, and in my chest I didn't really know what to think about everything I'd learned. And there was the dream. Then I remembered the dream, the clearing, the animals in the night sky, waiting for me. I took a shower, ate something without really paying attention, and went out. Anya joined you. Okay, so apparently this indicates a change in Maya's current stats. The character sheet may contain more details. Cool. Let's take a look at that real quick. I am now braver, more inspiring, and even more analytical. God, these roosters are going fucking crazy. We were halfway through the forest when I realized we were walking toward the logging site. Fuck yeah. As I walked toward the logging site, I noticed there were more people heading that way. A police car, a couple of SUVs, a TV truck, young people on bicycles, a green Land Rover from the Forest Services. When I got to the site, it felt utterly surreal, like I'd stepped onto a movie set. Anya looked around. So, what's the plan? To stop the fucking logging. We're at a logging protest. We need to stop this logging. I looked around. On my right was the ancient forest. On my left was the freshly torn clearing. Ahead of me, ruining the view, were huge logging machines and a group of people arguing in their shadow. It was clear they needed an outside voice to settle the dispute. I'm gonna look at these machines. I'd never seen a harvester before, and I was shocked by the vile ugliness of the machine. There were 3 at the site. Their long metal arms were wrapped with black pipes that looked like glistening intestines or weird hanging sperm sacs, and they reeked. The stench was dark, rancid, and putrid. Yet, none of the people there seemed to smell it. Not the reporters, not the police, not the loggers, nor the protesters. I couldn't understand it. The clearing was full of that smell! Kim was standing next to a vaguely military-looking white man who was arguing with Olga from the cemetery. The protesters were clearly conflicted. Fuck it, it could be fun. I went closer, looking for a laugh. This could be fun to watch. One of the police officers, young and nervous, said something I didn't fully understand. I smiled. What? Oh, no! No! I smiled at him and said, I don't understand, in my best Polish. He smiled back. Oh, he said, you're one of them. And then let us go. Then I noticed that someone joined us. And then I noticed that someone used the commotion to sneak with us past the police. A girl with disheveled, bleached-out hair. Don't worry. She patted the arm of the officer. It was an awful pickup line anyway. He recoiled. You shouldn't touch me, ma'am! I rolled my eyes. And wanted to say something, but I was interrupted. Pat! Some guy called her from the gathering. Could you come here? I need you to show Olga that chart. She sighed, reaching to her backpack and taking out a tablet. And they're at it again, she murmured under her breath and winking at me. Coming! We went towards the activists. As I walked towards Kim, I heard more and more of the argument. Olga, you can't! The man was speaking with a strong German accent. Pat stood next to him with her tablet. She looked a bit amused. Do not fucking tell me what I can or can't do, Cornell! Olga interrupted. I can because they are destroying our mother! I can fight with all the means at my disposal, even if that means burning those harvesters to the ground! A slender, green-eyed man was standing near her. He took a few steps back, went towards one of the harvesters, turned his back on us all, and pissed on the machine! Olga smirked. Aw, Daniel, you know how to bring the point home. He looked at her, confused. Cornell raised his eyebrows. Burn the harvesters? Cornell asked calmly. In this drought? Olga, are you out of your mind? You know what I mean. We fight them any way we can. Because this is a fucking war! She spat. He sighed. You've never seen real war, and it shows. Nobody is shooting at us, and believe me, we want it to stay that way. We need a peaceful protest. I approached Kim. Hey, can we talk? I asked, approaching Kim. Oh, Maya, darling, it's good to see you. They smiled. Maybe you'll be able to convince her. Oh, so I was to take a stand. I looked at them. I looked at them both. Olga with her fury and passion. Cornell with his cool, professional demeanor. And shared, without any reservations, what I felt about the situation. I mean, yeah, you generally do want to keep it peaceful, and right now I don't know the truth about these sons of bitches, but good God, I don't know. I'm not gonna make fun of both of them. What am I, a fucking centrist? There was a fine line to tread. I looked at them both. Olga with her fury and passion, Cornell with his cool, professional demeanor, and shared, without any reservations, what I felt about the situation. There's a fine line to tread, I said in silence. You don't want the protesters to be painted as terrorists, and you don't want them to be treated as irrelevant and ignored. Kim shook their head and moved forward. I observed them curiously. Olga, darling, you know I love you, but Cornell really knows what he's doing. Please, trust me on that one. They looked at her apologetically. Fuck off, Kim! You didn't even trust me enough to come here on your own when I asked you to. Lisa decided to say something. Lisa looked him straight in the eye. She had a peculiar accent. Kim, you want to teach me about violence? She looked him straight in the eye. About fighting oppression? Just because your boss went to one mission in Afghanistan. Her Polish was peculiar, kind of mellow. Cornell winced. Lisa, leave Kim alone. He didn't know what to say, and it seemed that the whole discussion would be derailed. I'm not gonna let that happen. Hey, guys, the forest, I said. The logging, the protest. Olga unclenched her fists. Cornell looked back at her and chuckled softly. You almost punched me. The conversation was over, at least for the time being. Cornell, together with his cronies, walked toward the reporters, while Olga went back to the group of people standing in the shadow of an old oak tree. I looked at the forest. I looked at the pushcha. The clearing, full of felled trees, was like a gaping, bleeding wound in the chest of a friend. My resolve strengthened. I came here to stop the logging, and after seeing what I'd seen, my resolve only strengthened. Yes, just like Olga said, Anya nodded, excited. What they're doing is unforgivable, and we have to fight! I looked at one group, I looked at the other. The harvesters were dripping with black oil, and the forest stood tall, serene, and full of golden light. It looked like it could protect itself. And then I looked at the felled trees, dead, limp, helpless. I mean, my girl Anya wants to stand with Olga. Don't know if that's the best idea, but at the same time, I think I'd better at least go with her to look out for her. As we approached, Daniel pricked his ears. I could have sworn they moved. Hello, fellow humans! He grinned at us. I felt Olga's eyes on me. She didn't seem to remember me at all. And who the fuck do you think you are? She demanded. She stood there with her arm wrapped around the waist of another woman. It was Lisa. She winked at me and mouthed, "It's okay." I want to start shit, but I don't. I heard about the protest and wanted to join, but it looks like you're doing just fine on your own, I said, not even trying to hide the sarcasm. Lisa nudged her. See, honey, I told you, it's obvious. I looked at them again. Olga rolled her eyes. I had more time to look at her now. She was wearing combat trousers, sandals, and there was a small, silver, double-bladed axe hanging on the string around her neck. The labrys. A lesbian feminist symbol. She wasn't hiding where she stood. Back to the most important question. What's going on here? I asked. Lisa said you could help me. Isn't it obvious? Her laugh was bitter. Your grandfather ran away and left his debt to the Pushcha unpaid. He was supposed to guard her. Since you're here, you can make it right. She seemed to believe it. I looked at her, skeptical, but she seemed to believe it. The question is, she looked at me as she paused, will you do it? Before I could answer, there was a commotion, a change of mood. Olga stiffened and looked over my head. The police were coming. Oh shit. The police were coming our way. The young guy in the uniform who'd let me through looked like he wanted to be somewhere else. "Officers!" Olga said, hissing the words through her teeth. "Ma'am," said an officer, whose round face was adorned by a mustache that looked like a shoe brush, "disperse!" But I wasn't easy to intimidate. I stood shoulder to shoulder with the other protesters as the officers started to approach. "Disperse!" repeated the mustached man. This is a dumb idea, but I'm gonna do it. I could see their faces covered in sweat under their helmets. I could smell the stench of sweat from their bodies lingering in my nose and throat like a putrid, acidic mist. The activists started to back down. Suddenly, my head was surprisingly clear. I'm gonna jump on a tree stump. I jumped on a tree stump and looked at the crowd. "Listen!" I shouted. Most of the heads turned in my direction. "Remember what this is all about!" I turned to the protesters. "Are you going to stand here and let them push you away?" I asked. For a split second, I was surprised how clear my voice was. The cops were scared. "We have the upper hand. We know what we stand for. They do not," I continued. "They think they are the masters here, but they are just following orders. They are just weak, vulnerable humans. They think their badges and weapons will protect them." I turned to the police. "We are just exercising our right to protest." I turned to the police. "The media are here to ensure that nobody oversteps their limits." The cops drew their batons and the protesters started running. See, where I'd come from, they would have shot at the crowds with tear gas like long ago. They wouldn't have even given us a warning to disperse. And then all hell broke loose. Wow, and no gunshots. Man, this is a different country. I heard harsh, menacing voices. I heard screams. I heard people running toward one another. The people crashing into the protesters. Some of them fought back. Some of them turned and ran. And some sat down on the ground only to be dragged away. I saw the reporters. The journalists came running, finally finding something that was worth moving their asses for. But some of the officers quickly stood in their way. There was a quick exchange of profanities, and then the cameras were lowered. There would be no evidence of police brutality in the media, at least not today. "Don't do anything rash," said Olga, dragging me away. "You've done enough for today." I kept silent. This time, I kept silent. I didn't know whether it was praise or rebuttal, and I didn't dare to ask. The ugly truth. When I was on the road to the village and nobody could see me, I doubled over and vomited. I always felt violently sick when there was too much to process at once. In the whole commotion, I lost Anya from my sight. I was alone, or so I thought. "Hey, let me help you," a voice behind me said, and I jumped. A woman was looking at me with concern. What happened? I was fine. "I'm fine," I said stiffly. She rummaged in her pocket and handed me a handkerchief. "Here," she said. "I have water as well if you need some." We walked slowly toward the village. We talked. I learned that she was an independent German reporter who'd come here about a month ago. Her name was Erika. "So why are you protesting the logging?" she asked after a few minutes of small talk. "We had to save the Pushcha." "I think the Pushcha is unique, and when I saw how many trees they've cut down in just one afternoon, it broke my heart." I said, still shaken by the sheer number of the fallen trees. I have to do whatever I can to save the forest. I looked at her. And why are you asking? She looked at me with renewed interest. Do you know why they are cutting down the trees? She asked back. Because you do know that logging is done by a government company, the state forests. The fuckers! Fuckers! I growled. Politicians are tainted. I hated politicians. I say we take off and nuke them from orbit. I shook my head. Pretty radical, she snorted with laughter. But that destroys a forest. Erica reached for her notebook. It all started with spruce bark beetles. Erica looked into her notes and started explaining the whole situation. That year, the beetles' infestation was of catastrophic proportions, and the foresters decided that the only way to stop it and save the rest of the forest was to cut down as many infested trees as possible. But was the logging legal? But is the logging legal? I wanted to know. Opinions differ, but such massive logging in a UNESCO-listed area might be illegal, Erica answered. Couldn't they just remove the dead trees? Better question is, was cutting down the trees necessary? Is cutting down the trees the only way to stop the infestation? I asked, confused. The foresters state that this is the only way, she said. Some biologists that they are cutting wrong trees and doing it too late to change anything. Can they just remove the dead trees? Maybe if they removed the dead trees, the infestation wouldn't spread? I tried to find a solution. They might do that, but dead trees are what make the forest unique, Erica smiled. There are 20 times more species living on a dead spruce tree than on an alive one. Did they have to intervene at all? Couldn't they just leave the pushcha alone and let nature take its course? I asked. That's one of the options, Erica admitted. But there's a drought, and no one is sure if the forest would survive on its own. I tried to understand her point of view. I see that you're trying to show me the whole picture, and I appreciate it. I sighed. I just hoped there would be an easy answer. I'm just doing my job, Erica shrugged. I describe all aspects of the situation to you, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do. It was a tough decision. I shook my head. Why did the situation always have to be so complex? At least I was sure that they were cutting down the trees and the pushcha needed my help. What happened to the wood? When they cut down the trees, what happens to the wood? I asked Erica. The state forests have to be financially self-sufficient. They earn money by selling forest products, including wood, she answered. That's why I think the bark beetle is not the reason, but an excuse to push more wood on the market. I concluded my case. She looked skeptical. You're not the only one feeling helpless, she sighed. But anger makes you see things in black and white, and the truth is always more nuanced than that. I said nothing. There was so much to process at once. Everything that happened at the logging site, the heat, the stench of the harvesters, the tension between Olga and Cornell that you could cut with a knife. It all made my head spin. What's the matter? She asked. I told her about my anger. I'm so fucking angry at what I saw. I took a deep breath, then I remembered what Olga had told me. All that mystical stuff. And they say that I have some family debts to pay. I shook my head. It's a lot to take in, and there was that foul smell back there. She looked at me with a weird expression. What smell? She asked. How come she didn't smell it? You didn't smell it? The harvesters reeked of something like meat that's been rotting in acid, only worse. I couldn't even find the words to describe it, but the memory of the foulness still clung to the back of my throat, swimming in my sinuses. I know what you're talking about, she answered slowly, but I don't think everybody can smell it. I looked at her and raised my eyebrow questioningly. You'll learn in your own time if you stay here long enough, she said, clearly wanting to drop the topic. What did she mean? What do you mean? I asked, getting irritated. I just told you you'll learn in time. Or not at all, which would frankly be better. Anyway, gotta run. As I watched her leave, I thought that whatever was my family legacy had surely manifested itself that day. Guess I'd made some more progress. I jumped right into the middle of a very tense situation, and at the very least, upset the status quo. I just hoped I didn't make things worse. I walked on in silence. Time to regroup. Anya came back soon after me. I lost sight of you, she said apologetically. I'm glad you made it back in one piece. So how was your day? Anya asked. I learned a lot. Did you know that the government supported the logging even when it was illegal? I shared my dismay. Anya just nodded solemnly. Yeah, I've read about it. Why didn't you tell me? Well, you have a lot going on, she shrugged. I met a lot of new people. Met some very interesting people, I said, still excited. Yeah, they looked like a colorful bunch, Anya grinned. Maybe you could introduce me later. They sure are passionate. They argue between themselves more than they argue with the loggers, I added. I incited some violence. I think I might have incited some violence, I admitted. I was just trying to lift their spirits. You should be more careful with your words, Anya frowned. There wasn't enough time to be careful, I protested. It was all I wanted to share. I shrugged. Just another day in Bialueza. We sat for a while in silence. You know, there's more to see here than Bialueza, Anya said from over her travel guide. Fuck me running. Pogorzelci, Budi, Termiski, Sri Lanka. There's something interesting in every village. An open-air museum. Some kind of folk university. The bison. Maybe you'd like to see something more than the logging. I couldn't see everything. It would be great if I could see everything, but I can't. I shrugged. I want to focus on the logging, even if I'm missing something else. And how's the search for your roots going? Anya couldn't stay silent for long. I shared what I'd learned. It seems that my ancestors lived around the forest for a long time, I said, and there are some kind of debts to be paid. Wow. Anya looked impressed. Honestly, I'm not sure what to think. But if you need something, just let me know. I was tired. I just sat there, looking through the window. The day'd been full on and I was exhausted. I didn't notice when I fell asleep. I can do anything. It's quiet now. Yet, I know deep down inside that something isn't right. I sneak. I'm sneaking through the forest to the logging site. It's getting dark. The light seeps away, as though there are millions of tiny punch holes in the sky through which it can escape, and then the darkness starts to pour in. I know what I will see. And I see bodies strewn across the ground, bloodied, maimed, with their limbs torn from destroyed torsos. I can see some of them are still alive, still struggling for air, still trying to live. They are all trees, fallen trees, still alive, still struggling for air. And then there's the stench. I can smell them. The stench is dark, rancid, putrid. There are monsters at the edge of the forest. They have long, skeletal arms. They are wrapped in glistening black intestines, and each arm has a wide, gaping mandible full of whirring blades. They snap at me blindly. I feel righteous anger burning through me like molten lava, bubbling from the ground, through my feet, up my legs, through my chest, and to my head. I point at the monsters. My friends watch, and I bask in their rage. I howl the sentence. I howl out the death sentence, and we run towards the monstrous shapes. We bite off heads and tear off arms. We are an executioner's axe, unflinching. Then I wake up. I gasped and bolted upright. I was alone. The sun was setting, and in the deep red light, the room looked like it was bathed in blood. My pillow and duvet were on the ground, and I was sweating bullets. I looked at my legs. When did they become so hairy? I could have sworn I'd shaved them that morning. It's happening. Oh sheesh, y'all. And now we're at chapter 3.